r/ask Reddit. What single human has done the most damage to the progression of humanity in the history of mankind? OP is compiling a hit list for their time traveling journeys. I just want to talk with them. Give them the clamps. Sheikh al-Islam. I heard of this guy after hearing someone on TV complain about how this man set the Islamic world back by centuries. In 1515, the age of the Ottoman Empire, a learned scholar of the kingdom issued a decree that forbid printing, press, and made using it punishable by death. Edit. Grammar. More context. Wiki. In the year 1515, Sheikh al-Islam of the Ulama, learned scholars, issued a fatwa that printing was haram, forbidden. As a result, Ottoman Sultan Selim I issued a decree of a death penalty on anyone using the printing press. The fatwa has been attributed as one of the reasons for the stagnation of knowledge, invention and discovery in the Muslim world. At a time when Europe was in the midst of the Renaissance period, it seems that Sheikh al-Islam is a title though, not a name. It seems that Sheikh al-Islam is a title though, not a name, and we would have known for sure though, if there were any books about it. Purportedly, the unnamed inventor of flexible glass, Vitrum Flexile, brought a drinking bowl made of the material before Tiberius Caesar. The bowl was put through a test to break it, but it merely dented, rather than shattering. The inventor repaired the bowl easily with a small hammer, according to Petronius, after the inventor swore that he was the only man alive who knew the manufacturing technique. Tiberius had the man executed. He feared that the glass would devalue gold and silver, since the material might be more valuable. https://en.m. Wikipedia.org Wiki Flexible glass. What an idiot. TC had access to what he thought was worth more than gold and silver, so rather than claiming this new flexiglass material for his own benefit in the name of the empire, or whatever, he wipes it out of existence? I mean, his face was on all the gold coins. It's probably difficult to put your face on the glass. How would the plebs recognize him if they didn't see his face on their money? Plus that means all the good he already has would be less valuable, and that could lead to an economic depression. Edit. This is based on an Econ 101 class I took years ago. I have no clue if it's right. The Ottoman caliphs who banned the printing press from the Muslim world. That's exactly how you destroy a civilization. Bro, that's like erasing the potential of millions of minds. Who knows what may have come from someone becoming literate enough to explain their ideas back then. I'd be thinking this onto a screen from Titan right now. Even more sad when you think that back then the Middle East was the hub of science and medicine. Andrew Wakefield. This man started the vaccines cause autism myth. I personally blame him for a lot of modern anti-vaxxers. I think I watched YouTube video or documentary on it recently. It was so interesting and also terrifying that one man can breed a bunch of unnecessary fear and hesitancy just because he wanted to make a profit, and his impact still goes on today 20 years later. Edit. Someone pointed out that I used the wrong to and now I can't unsee it, so I fixed it. And it was all based on a study of 12 people. Back to our Khilji. Hands down. In 12th century there was the world's biggest university in India named Nalanda where intellectuals from all around the world used to study. Then Turks invaded India under Khilji. They killed almost all the intellectuals and destroyed the university, and they burnt the library. The library continued to burn for 3 months. This has to be by far the biggest loss to mankind emo. Same as Sonny Ali, Songhai King, who couldn't read or write, and this inferiority complex led him to conquer and burn down Timbuktu and killing all scholars that didn't manage to escape. A leader with an inferiority complex destroying things? That's some wild history. Surely that wouldn't happen today. A lot of people don't seem to understand the question. It's not who did bad thing or who I hate more, it's who hindered the progress of humanity the most. People just don't want to understand. That's Reddit for you. People are eternally trying to get as many upvotes as possible with answers they know are popular opinions or jokes. Guy de Chauliac. He was a surgeon in the 1300s who vehemently spoke out against another fellow surgeon, Theodoric Borgognoni. Theodoric was a surgeon who wrote about his theories on proper wound care and believed that the best thing you can do to a wound is wrap it and keep it clean. Guy hated what Theodoric was writing because it directly went against the teachings of Galen. An ancient Greek surgeon who believed pus was the body's way of balancing your humors. Guy's teachings were widely accepted, and it's believed that his ignorance set the development of antisepsis in surgery back about 600 years. Edit. Guy de Chauliac was born in the 1300s, not 1200s, as he was alive during the Black Death. Ignaz Semmelweis was the guy who was thrown into a mental asylum for saying surgeons should wash their hands between seeing patients. Oh man, I only knew Guy de Chauliac from his super awesome records of the Black Death. I didn't know he did this. Bummer. Never meet your heroes, I guess. Robert Maxwell, father of Ghislaine. The man was the leading cause of paywalled scientific articles today. Before him, science publishing was relatively open. He helped shape the industry into the cancer on academia it is today. Edit. Quite the thing to wake up to. Thanks everyone. For those interested, I found an article that details the events pretty well. The TL Doctor version is that through use of PR marketing, exclusivity deals, and copyright law, Maxwell through Pergamon Press turned scientific publishing from a relatively non-profit driven endeavor to a predatory industry that charged institutions out the nose for research they paid nothing for. Check out Alexandra and Sahab. They've definitely helped many people who can't access scientific research. Video on Sahab. https://www.youtube.com watch V equals pro C6SZ low article. https://www.theguardian.com science/2017/John/27/profitable business scientific publishing bad for science. This is a good one. It is so frustrating to me that scientific articles are paywalled. I don't think we properly understand the effect this has on modern progress. There are projects afoot to undo this. In my university, faculty are being strongly encouraged, just short of required, I think, to publish open access, and this is part of a wider movement among EU universities. That stupid fish that decided to leave water. The sun is a deadly laser. Not anymore, there's a blanket. Yongle Emperor of the Ming Dynasty in China ordered the fleet of Zheng He, the greatest trading and exploration fleet of the time, to be burned during his reign in the early 1400s. This was the beginning of an era of isolation for Chinese kingdoms, which ultimately led to the collapse of Imperial China, and indirectly to the rise of the PRC. Additionally, the wealth of the world overall decreased as a result of reduced trade with China, and if China had continued exploring, it is possible that they, not Europeans, would have colonized North America, instead of merely maybe discovering it then telling no one as they did in history. It may not be a significant alteration of human progress, but it's one of those events that sets the world in a definitively different direction. Edit. Didn't say the Chinese did discover America, just that they might have, because it's been theorized that they did and they had the technology. I mean, the Inuit and Siberians have been crossing the Bering Sea in leather kayaks for thousands of years, so the Chinese definitely could have done it too if they wandered up that far. I don't know much about the actual history of that theory, and most of my comments on that are from Wikipedia searches this morning and willingness to believe fun hidden history scenarios that are actually possible. Thanks for all the upvotes. As a caveat, it would have hugely changed naval history too. It would be accurate to say that Europeans and their methods of sailing enabled European-led globalization and colonization. The durability of their designs, relative speed and range were critical developments with a measurable impact on the world. But, really, the Chinese had a totally different system which would have really worked just as well, if not better. European ships were relatively small and had canvas sails, while the great Chinese ships that Zheng He used were massive, and used these kind of folding bamboo sails, ingenious for their strength and manageability. They even had watertight compartments, something European ships didn't even consider using for centuries. Both parts of the world produced ships that could do what the other kind did, while looking extremely different. So as a maritime history buff, I'm totally fascinated by how things on the high seas would have looked had the Yongle Emperor not stifled Chinese naval expansion in the cradle. Edit. Book recommendations are anything by Brian Lavery and Robert Gardner. If China had begun to colonize the New World around the mid to late 1400s, the Europeans wouldn't be prevented from doing the same from the West around the same time. European and Far Eastern civilization would compete in the Americas. Rupert Murdoch. Had to scroll too far for this. With the new report out today on the climate crisis, it's only going to become more clear in the decades to come that this single man did the greatest damage to humanity in its history and will arguably be responsible for the greatest number of its deaths. The majority of Americans believe that climate change is a hoax, cooked up by the liberals and the Chinese, as a direct result of this man's propaganda. Disgusting. The majority of Americans believe that climate change is a hoax, cooked up by the liberals and the Chinese, as a direct result of this man's propaganda. Not a majority, a loud stupid minority, with rich people in charge manipulating them into believing stupid things. That monk who glued a page of geometry and algebra together to write prayers on it instead, set the world of maths back about 300-400 years. Edit. Here you go. A Greek monastery held the papers for a whole. Then it was overwritten with prayers. Edit. While not whole. I think I've read several theories about this, however, that make this far less impactful than the popular narrative suggests it is. This was unlikely to be the only copy of Archimedes' work, especially as even in Constantinople it was very far from its place of origin. Monasteries in general were wont to protect any kind of text, and not merely those that were religious in nature. The fact then that they chose to overwrite this suggests that they did not believe this to be a particularly uncommon text at the time, lending further credence to point 1. There were many other texts in the palimpsest other than Archimedes' Codex C, which one could make an equal argument as to the importance of. The choice of exalting one at the expense of all the others is technically just as much an overwriting, especially given the fact that it was not uncommon to write over expensive parchment at the time. The work was overwritten only 700 years after it was first written. This makes it very unlikely to have been instrumental in any mathematical advancement had it not been overwritten regardless. The fact that this manuscript survived, while few, if any, other copies of Archimedes' work survived, is less a testament to Monk's persistent overwriting, but more to do with how well taken care of the palimpsest was. Compare its fate in the 700 years it was in the possession of the church to what happened in the next 100 years alone. One could also ask what happened to every other copy of Archimedes' Codex C. That's at least my layman understanding of the matter. I might not be correct on all the details, but it's at least not as cut and dry as one errant monk erasing a few hundred years of mathematics. This is so rational, well reasoned and well explained that I'm sure it's gonna be buried and ignored under the waves of outrage as people rallied against that monk. There are two answers here, the ones who are serious and truly answer the question, and the ones who state some modern person they just don't like. U/Alpha Pro 2019 is probably the single worst human in history. Just kidding. You seem cool. U/Alpha Pro 2019 is probably the single worst human in history. Source: Thomas Midgley Jr. Almost everything he invented has seriously harmed humanity with his inventions. Thomas Midgley Jr. contributed to the poisoning of 3 generations of children, increased the risk of skin cancer and other skin problems related to exposure to UV rays, and contributed greatly to global warming. https://interestingengineering.com Thomas Midgley Jr. the man who harmed the world the most. Roe was responsible for adding lead to gasoline and freon gas to fridges. Then, after contracting polio and becoming paralyzed, he died by getting choked by an elaborate pulley system he invented to get himself in and out of bed. Lots of shit looks really bad in retrospect. What that article completely fails to do is discuss what it actually achieved at the time. 1920s engines weren't nearly as advanced as today's engines, and wore out much faster. Explained below in another Midgley post. Edit. Thanks to all the people explaining about lead, it turns out that Wikipedia's description of what knocking did to engines might have been over the top with its use of catastrophic failure. Knocking does not cause engines to explode. He's definitely on the hook for that one. Freon gas was a humongous safety innovation. What it replaced really nasty shit like sulfur dioxide, chloromethane, and ammonia. All 3 of those are combustible and very toxic gases. Freon was a big step at the time. It's so wrong to ascribe blame to him considering the CFC ozone reaction would not be discovered until 1974, and won the Nobel Prize for 1995. He died in 1944. His only fault was not having a crystal ball. I would suggest Andrew Wakefield. His work ileal lymphoid nodular hyperplasia, non-specific colitis, and pervasive developmental disorder in children has been directly responsible for the mistrust of vaccines, the decline of Western rates of vaccination, and basically telling everybody that there's a boogeyman underneath your bed. He is directly responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. He's a scientist who made a mistake. Why are you blaming him? It's not that he made a mistake. He had purposely customized the outcomes to meet the hypothesis so that he could get rich selling safe vaccines and diagnostic kits. He poisoned the well that saved so many people just so he could get rich. I have no idea how he can sleep at night. On balance, vaccines may be the greatest human accomplishment of all time. People in developed countries really have no idea how bad disease has been for most of human history, precisely because of the success of vaccines and antibiotics. The vast majority of human deaths for most of our existence has been from disease, and for one brief century, we managed to push it back to the fringes of our awareness. But antibiotic resistance and anti-vaxxers seem determined to bring us back to the old standard. It really is such a huge slap in the face to take a look at this technology that has saved billions of lives, the pinnacle of human achievement, and just say duck you. He sleeps on a pile of money he made from the people who paid him to fake the studies as well as in L. Macpherson's arms. Disgusting man. Nazir the Copper Merchant. Our first written texts could have been amazing accounts of how life was at the time. Instead they're just people giving bad reviews on Bronze Age Amazon. I think it just took some time to figure out how to use writing creatively. It's gonna start with some sort of pragmatic use, like how we had Nokias before iPhones. But I do like the image you create of some ancient troll slamming poor Nazir. Tell ye Nazir, Nanny sends the following message. When you came, you said to me as follows, I will give Jimal Sin, when he comes, fine quality copper ingots. You left then but you did not do what you promised me. You put ingots which were not good before my messenger, Sit Sin, and said, if you want to take them, take them. If you do not want to take them, go away. What do you take me for? That you treat somebody like me with such contempt? I have sent us messengers gentlemen like ourselves to collect the bag with my money, deposited with you. But you have treated me with contempt by sending them back to me empty-handed several times, and that through enemy territory. Is there anyone among the merchants who trade with Telman who has treated me in this way? You alone treat my messenger with contempt, on account of that one trifling mina of silver which I owe you. You feel free to speak in such a way, while I have given to the palace on your behalf 1,080 pounds of copper, and Umiabum has likewise given 1,080 pounds of copper, apart from what we both have had written on a sealed tablet to be kept in the temple of Samus. How have you treated me for that copper? You have withheld my money bag from me in enemy territory. It is now up to you to restore my money to me in full. Take cognizance that, from now on, I will not accept here any copper from you that is not of fine quality. I shall, from now on, select and take the ingots individually in my own yard, and I shall exercise against you my right of rejection because you have treated me with contempt. Whoever gave the order to burn the Library of Alexandria? From what I understand, the library was actually copied out or had texts removed prior to the burning. Also went a post on r/ask historians a bit back. Wikipedia talks about this as well. Also I remember reading, from here I think, about how the library right before the burning was already in disrepair. I could be totally wrong with this. Cyril of Alexandria is a pretty good bet. https://en Wikipedia. Wiki Cyril of Alexandria. He organized murder squads to go around Alexandria killing anyone who wasn't a die-hard Christian. This included nearly every great mind of the era. One in particular was Hypatia of Alexandria, one of the greatest minds in history. She invented a working steam engine nearly a millennia before the first steam locomotive. He is of course considered a symbol by Catholicism and the Church of England. Edit. It was Hero that invented the steam engine. Chiorlai just woke up to 100 damn replies. Her writing did survive, just not intact. Much of it within the treatise of Theon. Her father a great astronomer in his own right. Wikipedia is not infallible. Yes, easily in the top 5 of worst sin ever. Alexandria was pretty advanced in astronomy and mathematics at that time. We could have advanced so much quicker without him. Duck him. And duck all the people that make him a sin. There are a lot of saints in the church that are like him. There are more of the bog standard lived my whole life in humility for God, but every once in a while you read up on someone like Cyril and wonder what's the point of having something as final as the 10 commandments. Like there is a very clear no murder clause in there. I wonder why the Catholic Church canonized a literal slaughterer. Genghis Khan. While he personally didn't do much to hinder human progress, his reign began an era of Mongol expansionism and devastation, and his successors were responsible for the destruction of the House of Wisdom of Baghdad, ending the Islamic Golden Age, and not to mention the destruction of numerous cities and the deaths of many. Also, the Mongol Empire eventually paved the way for the Black Death. The empire led to many trade routes being formed between Europe and Asia, which eventually led to the transmission of the Black Death to Europe in the 14th century. As terrible as the Black Death was, it was actually the primary driver of change that led Europe out of the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. The Renaissance basically kickstarted modern civilization. The Black Death led to a great questioning of the old certainties. This led many, especially among the urban elite, to use reason to understand the world. The high mortality rate resulted in a drastic decline in the labor force. 7. Wages rose for both agricultural and urban workers. The survivors of the Black Death generally had a higher standard of living than before the plague. 8. This phenomenon occurred in both urban and rural areas. The crisis caused by the Black Death led to many changes in the economy in response to the fall in the population. Because of the labor shortages, there was a move from labor-intensive farming such as cereal to livestock and an increase in industry and agriculture. More labor-saving devices employed. In the period after the Black Death, an unprecedented amount of social mobility took place. Laborers became merchants, and merchants become members of the nobility. No longer was a person's destiny to be fixed by their birth. Previously, people assumed that one's station was fixed at one's birth and that one had to remain a member of the class you were born into. 24. People believed that a peasant would always be a peasant, an aristocrat, and an aristocrat. Italians, like other peoples in Europe, believed that one's birth determined one's future and that this was determined by God. 25. However, as social mobility became more widespread because of the Black Death, many people believed that a person's merits or abilities were what mattered and not one's birth. Daily History. How did the bubonic plague make the Italian Renaissance possible? I was reading something the other day about how the guys who cleaned up shit for a living during the period weren't catching the plague because they had to wash themselves thoroughly daily. People saw this and realized they needed to clean themselves better and the plague ended. Just joking. They actually thought the shit is what was keeping the workers alive, so the morons played in shit thinking it had magical properties that would keep them immune, and it caused a lot more deaths. Bad history as far as the eye can see. Sir Mark Sykes. This man was the British element in the Sykes-Picot Agreement. For those of you not in the know, 100 years ago the Middle East was an area that did have some nations and some more tribal areas. So people were more divided by language and culture, some by religion. France and Britain decided to carve up the Middle East into easier to govern territories, but fumbled this task and instead divided the territories on the map over these religious and tribal lines. Not only has this been a main contributing cause of conflict in the Middle East, if you take two opposing or rival groups and then suddenly group them as one country, what do you expect? But said conflicts have then fueled further conflicts again and again. This has then been further used by Islamic extremists as a reason to hate the Western powers, as they were the ones who created this terrible agreement. Even Sykes himself accepted that the agreement's wording should be changed in order to give those countries autonomous rule. What is a little sad is he actually seemed to want to help these regions with the agreement, but just bumbled the whole thing, which has led to most of the issues the Middle East has to this day. Sykes didn't make the modern Middle East though. He just played a large part in creating the circumstances in which its current problems thrive. Imagine all of the advancement, education and collaboration that could have happened had the Middle East been allowed to flourish unhindered and without resentment. The problem is Sykes-Picot ducked it up so badly that if you look at a tribal or religious map of the time, it's so bad that it looks intentional. Like, Not a single country that's unified by anything. It's so bad that it looks intentional. Well, it was LOL. Same with Africa and India. When your enemies are stable unified nations, they can't easily be exploited. It's just divide and rule. Edward Bernays. He created modern day PR, which set the blueprint on how to control the masses by deception. He was Sigmund Freud's nephew and basically applied his theories to marketing. And he specifically called it public relations because the Nazi regime had tainted propaganda. There's an awesome podcast called Behind the Bastards that is basically all about deconstructing the worst people in history. Would recommend it to anyone interested in this thread. Because of the butterfly effect. Ugh. If Ugh hadn't hit Bog with that rock in 200,000 BC, we'd be a galaxy-spanning utopian civilization by now. Remember what Bog said while dying? Ugh bun. He could have done so much for humanity. Et2. Ugh. Fun speculation for sure, but for your information to anyone reading this, OP kinda oversimplifies the causes and requirements of an industrial revolution. Namely that they imply that having coal kickstarts it and is required for it. I want to remind readers that the industrial revolution didn't just suddenly jump to factories and steam power, but began with things like the cotton gin and the power loom. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.